Welcome to Bacon Shorts by Bacon Sports. This is episode 24. I'm Rob Cressy, and welcome to NFL Week 13's Line Talk with my man, industry insider from Covers.com, Jason Logan. Jason, who is your hashtag random athlete of the day?
Well, it being the 24th episode, it could be the Kobe episode. Since, it's farewell Kobe. And if you're on Covers, I actually did a pretty cool breakdown of Kobe Bryant's impact on the Lakers' betting outcomes, looking at like the number of points he scored in a game and compared to their ATS and their over-under results. I've also even looked at his assists in games in which he's had more than like 5 assists and games in which he's had 10 or more assists, and how that's actually made the Lakers better. So go to Covers, check that out if you're an NBA guy. If you love Kobe, if you hate Kobe, it's the perfect read. However, my hashtag random athlete is Lanny McDonald. Old school hockey, baby.
I don't even know Lanny McDonald.
What's that?
I don't even know Lanny McDonald.
Are you a fan of mustaches?
Well, obviously, yes, of course.
Okay, well, this
is he the guy on the Flames with the red hair?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
That guy's stash is fantastic.
Lanny McDonald has a beautiful, gorgeous mustache. I've actually got to meet him a couple times, working for local papers in the past. Used to cover some of these like old-timer games and NHL all-star kind of past present games. And Lanny McDonald's always there. He's always a really nice guy.
Nice.
Lanny McDonald.
My hashtag random athlete of the day, whose birthday it is today, possibly threw the best deep ball in the history of the NFL. Former Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Jeff Blake.
I thought you were going to say Aaron Rodgers after last night, but his birthday was like 2 days ago or something like that.
So might as well just get right to that game. So I had the under in that game, which what an atrocious way to lose. And the reason I had the under is I found a trend that has been working well. Read something saying take the under on any divisional games with an over-under of 44.5 or less or more. For whatever it was hitting it like a 61 or 62% clip for I don't know what time period. So I've been blindly just saying, all right, let's see how it goes. Boom, started off 4-0. This is actually my first loss of the last 3 weeks on it. So just an interesting tidbit on what I've been doing with that trend. And the article
we had a cool trend going with primetime games as well. There's been a couple actually. Underdogs have been really, really hot. I'm trying to remember the stats here. They were like 23, 12, and 2 ATS or something like that. And then the under was almost the flip of that. The under was like it was like 13, 23, and 1 in primetime games. So, but I mean, last night you had the favorite and the over come in the double back door.
Right.
Yeah.
What blows my mind about the ending of that game is the positioning of the Lions defenders. That the catch by Richard Rodgers, the way he backed into it was great. He boxed it out. But I'm looking at the Lions on the periphery. It was literally 4 Packers in the middle with the Lions guys. No one barely even touched Rodgers.
Yeah, well, the thing was he played it smart. If you watch the play, everyone else is jammed up, and he's almost outside of the end zone. And as the ball comes in, then he steps in late because everyone's boxing out and clearing out, and he just kind of comes in and scoops it out of nowhere. It was a terrific catch. This guy's playing some good football, and kudos to Rodgers. He's my fantasy quarterback, and I remember looking at that at like halftime and being like, "You have 5 points for me, like you're Aaron Rodgers." Right. And then obviously it started to snowball, and the cherry on top of the sundae was that one.
A friend of mine, shout out to Tom Pellegrino, is actually in Vegas right now. He had the over in that game at halftime. The Packers, 78 total yards, down 17-0. He's like, ugh. And then lo and behold, at the end, he's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
That's why you crumple tickets. You never tear tickets.
Right.
You crumple tickets. Because once they're torn, there's not much they can do. You crumple, never tear.
All right, let's talk about the Week 13 lines in the NFL. What we're going to start with, though, is the prop pick of the week. What do you got?
Sure. Well, it's one thing I've been tracking, and especially with the way Cam Newton's playing. I mean, how could you not like this guy for MVP? I mean, he's put this Carolina team on his back, and they're rolling undefeated. Right now, it's basically a two-man race between Cam and Brady. Newton is plus 180 right now. Brady is minus 120 in the MVP futures race. 2 weeks ago, he was plus 200, and he opened the season at plus 1,500. So, I mean, if you took flyer on Cam earlier in the year, you got to be loving this. Now, what I like about this is that you can also kind of combine it with the Coach of the Year race. Right now, his coach, Ron Rivera, is plus 200 to win Coach of the Year, just ahead of Bill Belichick at plus 250. So I think these next coming weeks are going to be the weeks that are very telling. The Patriots have their back against it. They lost Gronk. They've lost Lewis. They've lost Edelman. They've lost everybody. If Brady and Belichick can get together and carry this team and keep them rolling into the playoffs with this many injuries, I mean, who can, you can't really deny that these guys are the two best at what they do. And if Carolina finished the season undefeated, then, you got to give the nod to Rivera and Cam.
It's going to make me ill to say this, but what about Marvin Lewis? So we're looking the Patriots with one loss. The Bengals also only have one loss, and they're healthier right now. So if I'm looking at the two teams, which is more likely to end up as the one seed, I would say the Bengals probably have a better shot at the one seed. And what if they went 14-2?
Yeah, no, that's a great – I don't have the exact price on Lewis in front of me, but, I mean, that's a great value bet. I mean, that's the way to kind of think outside the box and say, okay, well, the Patriots may fall apart here with all these guys missing. And Lewis swoops in, and the Bengals continue to play well, and Lewis is the Coach of the Year, yeah.
Is there any chance Marvin Lewis could get Marty Schottenheimer, go 14-2, lose in the first playoff game, and they're just like, sorry, Marvin, you got to get past the artificial barrier of not winning a playoff game?
Yeah. It's the NFL. They love to fire head coaches.
Right. I would think no, because the Bengals have had plenty of opportunities to can Marvin Lewis for mediocrity plus some. Cool. That's interesting there. So, all right, moving on to the next one. You've got a crazy gambling parlay, and I love hearing gambling stories. What do we got?
Sure. Our friends at bookmaker.eu, which is an online sports book, they hit us up with a nutty college football parlay this past week. A guy came in to put $100 on a 15-team parlay. So here, I'm just going to read them off this list here. Okay, so he had Louisville money line, Michigan State money line. He had Duke -2, Indiana money line, BYU -2, Virginia Tech -2. North Carolina -2, Florida State -1. Now he may have been buying. I'm not sure if these were the exact spreads or if he was buying teaser points or buying points here. Georgia -2, LSU money line, Northwestern -2, Alabama money line, Wisconsin -2, Oklahoma -6, Mississippi -1.
Wow, that is good for him. My goodness.
Yeah, and it's $70,000.
Woo! What I noticed there.
So he's having a pretty baller Christmas right now.
A lot of lower spread games. He wasn't really leaving himself to having a team have to cover double digits.
That was the thing. He either played big chalk money lines, and then he kind of offset that by some short favorites. So I mean, give or take a few points, you're basically playing the money line.
Is there? Have you guys seen or done any research on just straight money line parlays, large ones, taking favorites, or it always seems that if you're just like, all right, take the top 3 or 4 favorites every week and just parlay all those together money line.
Yeah. I mean, talking to Vegas books, it's one thing that just kills them every week, and especially early on where you had some really dominant teams, like the Pats were winning, Carolina was winning, the Packers were winning, the Broncos were winning. all of those big favorites were winning. And the public guys, like the general visitors in Las Vegas, will come in. They just want a winning bet, but they want to make some money off of it. So they'll go in and they'll play like a 5-team parlay of money line favorites, and it's like chalk, 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 chalk. But they were coming in, and it's something that books just every week I talked to them, they were just like, oh my God, these money line parlays. Especially where they rolled over into like a Monday or a Sunday night game, and you had one of those big favorites playing on the Monday or the Sunday night game. It was just like they were tearing their hair out about them. Now they've stumbled a bit here in the second half of the season, but it's I mean, when you have those dominant teams, the public will jump on them and just say, oh well, I don't care about the points, I just want a winning bet, and they'll tie a bunch together to kind of get the price better.
All right, now let's get to the Week 13 lines. Who are the sharps on this week?
Sure, a couple home dogs, actually. They like the Chargers at home to the Broncos, and they like the Rams, of all teams, against the Cardinals. So those two home dogs this year are 32, 25, and 1, covering at 56%. So if you just blindly bet home underdogs, you would actually be making a profit this NFL season.
Who is the public on this week?
The public team, any of the Thanksgiving teams, actually, the before yesterday, there was a lot of money on the Lions. And then the public did come in on Green Bay later on in the game, which is what you see from the standalone primetime games. But the Bears and Carolina, two Thanksgiving Day winners, people are remembering those standalone games, and they like them this week.
What game is the books sweating the most?
It's the Panthers game up against the Saints. Talking to Vegas books there yesterday, there was one place that had one $200 wager on the Saints, and that was it, just one. Now that'll change as all the tourists roll into town and people get their money down. But as far as Thursday afternoon, it was like 98% of their handle was all on the Panthers.
80-20 rule in effect on that game. Over 80% of bets coming in on the Panthers on the road. All right, let's do a quick breakdown of each of the games, starting with the aforementioned Chicago Bears at home taking on the 49ers. Spread is Bears favored by 7.5. Wow, talk about some respect there.
Cool angle for this one. The Bears defensive coordinator is Vic Fangino. He was former 49ers DC. And he actually interviewed for that head coaching job in San Francisco, and they didn't go with him. So there's a bit of a revenge angle here. Bears are playing terrific football. They've covered in 4 straight. With the Niners, there's not a lot to like about this team. The Bears had extra rest. This is San Francisco traveling. This is San Francisco playing in Chicago in December. It's not supposed to be super cold, but it's not San Francisco weather.
49ers, a vastly different team on the road than they are at home. And strangely, I don't mind Blaine Gabbert. In the whole grand scheme of backup quarterbacks, I think Blaine Gabbert has been better than expected.
Yeah, I like his ability to really move outside the pocket. He's nice kind of on the run. He was a lot faster than I expected him to be. Obviously, I didn't watch him a lot. He was in Jacksonville before. I didn't, watch Jacksonville. So,
right.
So I didn't really have a whole lot of tape on this guy. But, I was impressed watching him move around in the pocket and break outside and throw some of those balls on the run.
All right, next game, and probably going to be very lopsided action on this one. Cleveland Browns at home taking on the Bengals. Bengals 9.5-point favorites. Man, I can't see many people wanting to back Austin Davis, and when I see something like that, I see value potentially.
This one actually opened 7.5 before that Monday night game, and then obviously they have the browniest Browns loss in the history of the Browns. And it's jumped up as high as 10.5, so it's crossed over that key number of 10. We were talking the other day in the office and just saying, okay, how bad does the Cleveland Browns not want to play Manziel? Like, how much do they just want to cut this guy, but they don't want to, absorb that firestorm right now? And we were kind of setting odds on, okay, here's a prop. Will Johnny Manziel take a snap this weekend?
Ooh.
So give me your price. Give me your odds on that. Will Manziel take a snap this weekend?
I would say Johnny Manziel taking a snap this weekend plus 250.
Oh, you're a little more generous than I am. I said plus 450. I think they would rather put a punter in before they put Manziel in.
So I heard an interesting thing. I don't know if it was Colin Cowherd or who said it, but it may not be a bad thing that Johnny Manziel is not playing because of the teams that the Browns are playing. In terms of it's a murderer's row, they got the Bengals, I think they got the Steelers. They've got some other tough games where if we're looking longer term with this, you don't want Johnny Manziel to go in there and get crushed for 5 games with what little confidence there is. Is there a way to say, sit him, maybe use that as a learning experience and not have it further bring him down?
Sure. Or is it kind of a cloak and dagger tank job?
Right.
Johnny Manziel going off and partying and falling off the wagon. Is that just kind of an excuse to say, oh, okay, well, we don't want to play him because of this, but really they don't want to play him because they don't want to win.
Right.
So, maybe this is the elusive tank job the Browns are going for.
I want to do that. Johnny Manziel gets in the game bet.
I'm sure if I threw it to a couple sportsbook contacts, they would actually get it posted. Someone may actually have it up right now, but I'm sure I could get odds on it. Nice. I'll let you know.
All right, next game, Titans at home taking on the Jaguars. Titans 2.5-point favorites here. This one is a repeat of a game we saw on Thursday night 2 weeks ago, which ended up being sort of a dud fest in terms of watching. Mariota and Blake Bortles, obviously two young and up-and-coming quarterbacks that I seem to like both of these guys.
Yeah, the first game was kind of a snoozer. I think it was a Thursday night game, and I did not watch it. Nope. And talking to a lot of bookmakers at the time, they were like, I'm not watching this game. I'll get the result at the end, and that'll be enough, and we'll grade it that way. One thing that I looked at in my weekly mismatches column is Tennessee has actually been a really good team inside the 20-yard line. They've been a good red zone scoring team. They've actually scored touchdowns on 62% of their attempts, which is seventh in the NFL, which is pretty good for a team like Tennessee. When you flip it and look at Jacksonville has just rolled out the welcome mat for these guys inside the red zone, and they've actually allowed opponents to score touchdowns on 68% of their red zone tries, and that's worst in the league.
Wow. Nice. Yeah. I don't think we need to labor over this game too much, do we?
I think we did enough already. It's too much overkill.
All right, my adopted Buffalo Bills taking on the Houston Texans. Bills favored by 3.5, and my spider sense doesn't buy into this Texans team entirely. I know that they're on this really nice streak of the last 4 games. Defense seems to be playing a little bit better, but there's something on me that just doesn't trust this Texans team as much as I think people want to trust them. And there may be a slight J.J. Watt bias in there, being like, oh, this Texans defense is finally coming into their own. But in this same season, they got destroyed earlier this year. And I know teams can get better and change, but I'm not willing to forget what I've seen the first half of the season. And by the way, Brian Hoyer is still their quarterback, so that's not exactly a model of trust for me.
Mm-hmm. I was looking at the AFC South future, their divisional odds here, and the Texans are plus 140 to win the AFC South, behind the Colts minus 175, and the Jaguars, who a few weeks ago I was like, that's the play right there for the AFC South, plus 1,500, and they're still alive, like they still have a shot to do this. And the Jaguars have a pretty soft schedule. If you look at Buffalo in this situation, Buffalo's defense has been really not as good as advertised this year. They've given up some big yardage, and then they just gave up I think it was 410 yards to Kansas City last week. Kansas City is not an offensive juggernaut. You know, you look at what they do. They throw underneath. Now Macklin's giving them a nice deep ball threat, but you know they've given up over 400 yards to Kansas City.
You know what's the problem with Buffalo is they're stupid. The amount of penalties, it is. The amount of penalties, and I watch a good amount of the games.
Oh, absolutely.
And when they're, no joke, they can get 10-plus penalties in a game, and it's like pass interference, personal foul, holding. You're like, what? No wonder their defense has such a hard time because they're stupid and undisciplined. Yeah,
that was actually a mismatch that I looked at last week. You and I didn't talk because of the holiday, but that was a mismatch I looked at last week going into the Kansas City game, of Buffalo being like the top penalized team, and then Kansas City was like maybe it might have been like the second or third lowest penalized team in the league. So it was just like, oh, please give me all these extra yards. Thank you. Yes. Holiday season, it's the giving season. They've shot themselves in the foot a lot.
One positive for Buffalo is the rise of LaShawn McCoy. Last 3 or 4 games, he has been back to the old shady, even in tough matchups.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what Carlos Williams' status is. Shoulder or concussion? I think it was shoulder. So I wasn't sure. I don't know if he's playing this week. So it could be a lot of shady, but I mean that Texans defense is playing really, really well right now and locked down some good running teams.
Yes, the only caveat when the Texans have struggled, it has been on the road.
So, yeah, and Buffalo's a tough place to play. It's not going to be Buffalo December weather there, but it's on the road. It's in Buffalo.
It was actually gorgeous in Buffalo when I was there last weekend.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm not too far from there, actually, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, I don't mind these Decembers.
All right, next game. Speaking of teams I don't trust, the Miami Dolphins at home taking on the Ravens. Dolphins 3.5-point favorites. And man, what a roller coaster year this has been for Ryan Tannehill. I don't know what Dolphins fans, if they're looking at this season, how do you feel about Ryan Tannehill and everything we've seen? They went from potential Super Bowl outsiders to, man, this team is just not good.
Yeah, I think the hype was a little too much, especially on the defensive side of things. And it took them a little while to get guys like Sue, used to that system, get them going. And then they took some bad injuries on the defense. So I think they were really counting on the defense to have an impact to help them win games. The same way like St. Louis's defensive line was winning games for them the last few years. Really have an impact, and it just wasn't there. And then all of a sudden it falls on the shoulders of the offense that just isn't ready to go. Cool note, and something I read this week, and if you're an over-under bettor, this is something to keep in mind. So they fire their offensive coordinator. They make Zach Taylor their interim OC, and what he was saying is that they plan to run the ball. They asked him, okay, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. Running the ball equals unders in the NFL betting world because, one, the yardage obviously isn't as big as a pass game, and the clock keeps ticking when you run the ball. And then you also match up against a Ravens team, which has basically lost every offensive weapon they have. You look at last week, and they scored 33 points against the Browns, but 14 of those points came from defensive. There was an interception for a touchdown, and then I believe they ran back a punt too. So, so there it is. There's good undervalue with here. I think 43. The total might even go down even more.
Sneaky DFS play for you guys out there. It looks like Rashard Matthews, wide receiver for the Dolphins, will not play, which means Devontae Parker could get some looks. Had, I think, 4 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown last week. All right, next game we briefly mentioned. New Orleans Saints at home taking on the undefeated Carolina Panthers. Panthers favored by 7. Over-under is 50. This is one of those divisional games for me that I did take the under based on the trend there. So do you feel good fading the public on this one, knowing that, is this the Super Bowl for the Saints?
I will say I did take them in my pick and pool. Just because, anytime you're getting a lot of points in these divisional matchups, especially at home, it's a big game for the Saints. The one thing that I did look at, and again, plugging my mismatches column, Greg Olsen, one of the best tight ends out there right now. This guy just mopped the floor with New Orleans in Week 3. He had 2 touchdowns, and he had, what did he finish with? Like 134 yards. There it is. And the Saints actually have allowed the second most yardage and the second most touchdowns to tight ends this year. So it could be a big day for Greg Olsen. If they can slow him down, make Newton kind of try to find some other targets, the Saints have a shot, but that's asking a lot of this pass defense right now.
To pile on that, the Saints have allowed 6 touchdowns to tight ends in the last 3 games.
Yeah, actually, I have that there too.
Nice.
Same brain.
All right. Next game, Minnesota Vikings at home taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks favored by 1.5. And I was actually shocked to see this line where it is because the Vikings are 9-2 against the spread this year. When is everyone going to realize here's a team that just doesn't score a ton, but they've got a good defense, win close games? And is there a little bit public inflation on the Seahawks? They see them score a lot of points against the Steelers, but it was just one game at home in a game that they could have lost for all intents and purposes. I like some Minnesota.
Yeah, actually, it's very good. It's a very good point. It is a knee-jerk reaction seeing what they put up last week. 33 points or 34 points or something like that. And Russell Wilson goes off and has a monster day. The one thing I looked at, bless you. The one thing I looked at is this is Minnesota's second straight week looking at the same schemes. Last week they played the Falcons. Dan Quinn, their head coach, was the defensive coordinator, the brain behind that NFC Championship 2-time winning defense in Seattle. So a lot of the schemes are similar now. Obviously, Seattle executes a lot better. They have better talent than the Falcons do, but they're going to see the same opportunities. They're going to see the same adjustments, and they're going to see similar kind of characteristics to that Seattle defense that they did last week. So they're going to look at that game film. They're going to compare it to Seattle's tape. And, Adrian Peterson just rolled over the Falcons. What do you have, like two scores, like 158 yards or something like that? That's a big day. And, it gives them, it's kind of, they took a test before having to, apply it to real life, or had a prep test before the big exam. So that's the way I look at this. I like Minnesota in this.
Speaking of teams who are not good at defending tight ends, the Seattle Seahawks, not good as well. One thing that is in the back of my mind regarding the Vikings is I want to fade them as the season goes on in cold weather games where I don't think Teddy Bridgewater will be as effective with a weaker arm. I don't know when that'll happen, but it's just something that is in the back of my mind. Even though they don't throw a ton, nonetheless, I still think it could have an impact at some point.
Sure, I think that window is going to be closing soon. When do they open that new stadium? It's like next year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're playing at the University of Minnesota right now. So, so if that's something you're looking for, then hopefully Mother Nature delivers.
Right. All right, next game, we've got the St. Louis Rams at home taking on the Cardinals. Cardinals favored by 6, and this is a game in which you have to imagine tons of the public are going to be on the Cardinals. This Rams team is welcome to 8-8 Jeff Fisher. They seem to show up 3 or 4 times a year, and in the end up with average to below average end results.
Yeah, the thing with the Rams is that they usually play well within the division. In the last 8 matchups between these two teams, 6-2, the underdog, ATS. So the Rams getting points at home. This is, and talking to bookmakers in Vegas, this was kind of a game that puzzled them a bit because the sharp money has come in on the Rams. Like you said, the public's going to be all over Arizona. So this will be a game where they're split. Books don't mind that at all. That's what they like. They don't like it when both sides are on the same team. So interesting. And I asked them, I said, well, are they trying to trim down the price on the cards and try to scalp the line? And they said, usually that happens when you're talking like 7, it's like throwing a half-point hook in there, 7.5, 10.5, games like that. They said with the lower end of that, they don't really see that a whole lot. They won't really try to manipulate the line and then play the other side. So, the sharp guys are on the Rams. So if you do like to follow the sharp action, that's, might be a play for you.
In DFS, there will be loads of people on David Johnson, the now starting running back for the Cardinals, filling in for the injured Chris Johnson. Definitely some value there from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, my kid picked him up in season long. So
yes. All right, next game, Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Buccaneers favored by 1. And man, I am loving the demise of the Atlanta Falcons, seeing as how I am not a believer in Matt Ryan. It seems that Tampa certainly is trending upwards in terms of their team as a whole. I like what we've seen so far out of Jameis Winston, and I think that the Buccaneers have exceeded my expectations this year, whereas the Falcons on the flip side certainly have not.
Yeah, heading into this, the Falcons have just been plagued with turnovers in recent games. And they had 3 against the Vikings last week. And the Vikings aren't a team. They're a very conservative defense, and they don't press. They don't try to create those turnovers or kind of cheat, put themselves out of position to create turnovers. And they still got 3 out of the Falcons. So if you're looking back over their last 6 games, they have 8 fumbles and 8 interceptions. And then they're playing a Bucs team up until last week's game against the Colts. I believe the Bucs had a takeaway in every single game of the season, and they have 20 on the year. So they do create those turnovers, and they'll make teams pay for it. So, this is a tough divisional game, and you can't say enough bad things about the Falcons right now.
Yeah, in the first matchup against the Buccaneers, which the Buccaneers won, that was a game in which the Falcons were just mindlessly turning the ball over on the 20, and it was just like turnover after turnover after turnover. It was just nauseating.
Yeah, and it could be, we look at those, the way the teams are kind of going right now, it could be the same thing. It could be an ugly game.
All right. Speaking of ugly games, we've got the New York Giants at home taking on the New York Jets. The Jets are favored by 2.5, and there's something in me that refuses to believe in Ryan Fitzpatrick as the season continues to go on, irregardless of this line. I know that the Giants' offensive line super dinged up. They can't stop anybody on defense. It's just there's a world of problems there. But I'm always very reluctant to be like, you know what? I'm going to bet Ryan Fitzpatrick as a favorite. I know he's played better than expected, but we've seen this narrative before. Maybe not this long into the season, but we've seen the narrative.
Sure. I think you're jealous of his beard, Rob. That's
very much so. He's got a fantastic beard.
It is glorious. When he's done, this week he'll go back to the mall and have kids telling him what they want for Christmas.
Right.
The one thing with the Jets, they're super efficient inside the red zone. 73% of their red zone trips, they've scored touchdowns. They've got Tucker, they've got Marshall, they've got Chris Ivory. They've got those short yardage weapons, guys that can find the space when it's crowded, and they make it count. That's the thing with the Jets. They may not be the most explosive offense, but when they get there, they get in there.
All right, next game, we've got the San Diego Superchargers at home taking on the Brock Osweiler-led Denver Broncos. Broncos favored by 3.5. And I think everyone's been pleasantly surprised at the play of Brock Osweiler. And I think there is not much of a reason why people would want to bet on the Chargers, though exact same scenario or a similar scenario last week. Why would you want to bet on the Chargers, especially after that disaster game they had? Come back and they beat the Jaguars. Phillip Rivers still slinging the ball around, even if he's throwing to Dontrell Inman and Stevie Johnson.
Yeah, this is a game where the Sharps were on the Chargers. It opened forward, it's down to 3.5. There will be public money on the Broncos. Of course, they're coming off that big win against New England. Which is one reason why you should kind of be careful of the Broncos. Maybe this is a perfect letdown spot. They're on the road. They're coming off that big win. Everyone's talking about this, young gunslinging quarterback. However, the one positive for Denver and one thing that I like to see is that they've gotten back to the running game. The last few games, you've seen Hillman, you've seen C.J. Anderson pick up some yardage and take some of that weight off of Osweiler's back. And then you're taking on the Chargers. And the Chargers have just been horrific against the run. Almost 124 yards on the ground per game, which is the 7th most in the NFL. So, it could be on the run game here. And you want to control the ball and control the clock when you're playing against Phillip Rivers, because regardless of who he has out there, he can still strike for big points.
Chargers giving up the most fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. All right.
There you go.
Next game, Oakland Raiders taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs, 2.5-point road favorites, and people are a little bit more on this Chiefs team now, and I don't know if I'm buying them as much. The Chiefs defense is something that I thought I was going to put a little bit more stock into, but the Bills could have and should have won that game last week, put up a decent point total, and it was the offense instead that did well. Spencer Ware filled in for Sharkandrick West, who was filling in for Jamal Charles. Now it looks like they might have two okay running backs that can do something. I just don't know if I'm ready to trust the Chiefs, and I see the Raiders as a team that at one point everyone liked them trending upwards until that Steelers game. They've sort of trended downwards. They lost that game against the Lions. But I still see maybe some potential value with them, because I'm not willing to forget that I liked the Raiders at some points during this year.
Yeah, when we started talking at the start of the year, the Oakland Raiders were the big sharp favorite. They were the sharp darling, and the shine is really worn off the silver and black right now. They lost 3 in a row, and then they squeaked out a win against Tennessee. There's not a lot to like about them right now. With Kansas City, the defense was playing well. The defense is creating turnovers, which is the biggest thing that's come up in the last 5-6 weeks for them. But their offense has just erupted, and you've seen, this is, like we said earlier, this has been an offense that was very, bread and butter. Like, it was run the ball, throw the short ball. They didn't really have any deep threats. I mean, for the longest time, they didn't have a receiving TD to a wide receiver. But now you see the chemistry growing with Smith and Jeremy Maclin, and you're seeing that deep ball, and that threat of the deep ball stretches the defense, opens things up for those short gains, and then when the defense comes in, then they strike again. They're a tough team to figure out right now. And looking back, I think it's over their last 4 games, they've averaged 34 points, that's Patriots points right there.
And speaking of tight ends again, Raiders atrocious at stopping tight ends. Loving some Travis Kelce potentially to get in the end zone this weekend. All right, 3 games remaining. New England Patriots at home taking on the Eagles. Line is only Patriots -9.5.
Only.
Only because you're used to seeing. Let's talk perception here for a second. The perception of the Eagles right now is that their defense is the worst in the history of the world. Everyone loves to pile on Chip Kelly in this team for when things are not going well. Patriots, on the other hand, very public team, even though they've lost tons and tons of people. You're just used to the line being double digits for the Patriots. Eagles coming off a long week now. And the Patriots, I don't feel like they're in FU mode anymore. I feel like they're in get a win, move to the next game, and try and keep as many people healthy as we can mode.
Yeah, it's kind of like Rocky IV, and he pops Drago in the mouth, and it's like he's not a machine, he's a man, he bleeds, right? This is what that is. You see them kind of crumbling over the last few weeks with injuries and some close games. And then they finally go and they lose that one, and they lose it in a kind of a crushing fashion. And you saw the air that got sucked out of that team when Gronk went down. And so this is a bit of a reflection of all those things. It's a loss. It's all those injuries mounted, and then it's not having Gronkowski. And I mean, he's almost as valuable to this team as I won't say as Brady, but I mean their ebb and flow between the two of them is what makes this team go. And they could lose all their receivers and all their running backs, but if they just had Gronk and Brady, they'd still be okay.
Right.
And that's why you're seeing this under 9.5. Now, the public does like to play. Anytime they see New England at home and they're giving less than double digits, they like to jump on them. But talking to Vegas books this week, the public really hasn't shown up too much. Like, they're a little apprehensive, and they want to see how this goes on. However, I've got a killer stat for you. So hold on to your hat and your ugly sweater. Good. Patriots off their first loss of the season since 2003 are 10-1 straight up and 10-1 ATS. That's coming off their first loss of the season. They've also gone 8-3 over under in those games. I don't know if they'll get to the over. I was interested to see this total because there's still the perception that Philly is a high scoring team, and then obviously the Patriots can put the points up, but I was interested to see the total. It's not as high as I thought it would be, and I think that kind of reflects what they've done in recent weeks, or what's happened in recent weeks. But yeah, very telling stat. I mean, this team hard off their first loss of the season, 10-1 ATS.
Wow, that was a fantastic stat there. All right, 2 games left. My Pittsburgh Steelers.
You were so convinced when you said that. Fantastic stat.
My Pittsburgh Steelers at home taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Steelers favored by 7, and this is a must-win for my boys. They let one slip last week. It would have been nice to have that road win versus the Seahawks. Matt Hasselbeck turning back time and playing better than expected, but when will that floor drop on that? That's one of those things where he has been steady, but I'm still waiting for the week where you're like, man, he still is 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't turned the ball over a lot, which is kind of what they asked for him. The one thing I looked at, again, going back to my mismatches column, Pittsburgh is a home run hitting team. They have 31 plays of 25 passing plays of 31 yards or more this season. They've got Brown, they've got Martavius Bryant. Who was the guy last week had all the carries or all the touches for them?
Marcus Wheaton. That was an outlier. That won't happen again.
You don't think so? They've got options, and they can, and then D'Angelo Williams is also a threat to catch the ball in the flat and pick up big yardage too. And this guy is playing, beyond his years. He's had new breath breathed into him since moving to Pittsburgh. And then when you look at the Colts have actually allowed the most passing plays of 25 yards or more with 29. So this is a complete mismatch. I mean, if the Steelers can come out and put a couple of those home runs on them, get up quick, I don't know if Hasselbeck really has the firepower to bring them back. So it's something where I think you're going to see the Colts trying to play control football, eat up the clock, and I think you're going to, the Steelers are the Steelers. They are what they are. They're going to look to go downfield and strike big.
The tough thing is the Steelers' strength in the defense is their run game. So the Colts, if they do get behind, will have to pass the ball, which we saw Seahawks have some success there, but that also means putting the ball in Matt Hasselbeck's hands a lot more than you probably would want to.
Yeah, I mean, you want to compare Russell Wilson, who's, two-time Super Bowl appearances, and Matt Hasselbeck, who was there with the Seahawks, but obviously that was a long, long, long time ago. And lost to the Steelers.
I was just about to say that. Man, we are having the same thought process today. All right, last game, the Washington Redskins at home taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Redskins favored by 4.5. And I'll actually start with this question. I put on Twitter this week, which owner would you rather have, Jerry Jones or Daniel Snyder?
Oh, Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones. Absolutely.
Why?
Well, I mean, we've seen Snyder just constantly put his foot in his mouth. I mean, Jerry Jones wants to win. More than anything, he wants to win. And we've seen him go after, big-name free agents and throw some money around. He brought in guys like Terrell Owens, obviously the Greg Hardy thing. They went after him. And they've gone after guys with character issues. Snyder just kind of seems out of his element. He's kind of just fine, punching everyone's ticket to come see the games, and that's it. I don't know if he really has that commitment to winning that Jerry Jones does. Jerry Jones does get in the way of a lot of things, and I wish they had. I can't believe they let Bill Parcells walk away the way they did. At least try to get him into the front office or something like that. But it's the same thing that happened with Jimmy Johnson. So. It's still Jerry Jones.
Yeah, so for me, I begrudgingly took Jerry Jones because he does have Super Bowl victories under his belt, something that Daniel Snyder cannot say. And for me, the Jerry Jones being so public-facing was the biggest thing that I had going against him, where I would prefer somebody in the background. But nonetheless, let's get to the spread. 4.5, Matt Castle, now the quarterback. This seems like it is certainly a lost season for your Dallas Cowboys. Kirk Cousins, better than expected for the Washington Redskins, but are we ready to fully trust Kirk Cousins in a divisional game?
I think that's a question for the Redskins. Are they ready to do that? I mean, are they going to start looking for another quarterback? He's played well, and he's definitely earned it. But I mean, the whole RG3 thing, they were so reluctant to put him in. And the guy can only do so much to kind of convince them that, yeah, I'm your guy. But, the Redskins have to see that. For Dallas, this is just a game. I mean, after last week, I'm completely defeated as far as the Cowboy season. I really thought that, you beat Carolina, or at least have a good showing against Carolina and get Romo going. And those things can snowball, especially in this division. No one wants to win this division. But now Romo's out, we're back to Castle. For this game, the game plan is like run. Lots of Turbin, lots of McFadden. I was like, put 4 tight ends on the field and just have them run block. Just do that. Washington is I think they're 28th against the run this year. So, I mean, just bully them. Own the football, chew up the clock, run, win the game 14-3, 14-10, whatever you got to do. But just run the ball. I don't want to see Matt Castle throw the ball. It makes me sad, Rob. It makes me sad.
I feel your pain. I'm sorry. I never like to see you in peril, my friend.
Well, it's like, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger gets, hit by a bus, and then he's like up the next day. I'm fine. No concussion here.
Right. Exactly. He's a robot.
He's Wolverine. He's the NFL equivalent of Wolverine.
All right, Jason, give us some plugs. What are you working on with covers.com? What's sizzling?
All right, well, it's championship week here for college football, so we're going to have a lot of content based around those championship games. Joe Fortenbaugh has a column coming out here this morning looking at the biggest and best college football championship games. We did some really cool stuff with basketball this week. We looked at the Golden State Warriors and the Philadelphia 76ers. We handed that to our friends at the Harvard Sports Analysis Collective, a bunch of Harvard number crunchers. These guys love it. And they basically determined which team is the better bet. I mean, Golden State is having to give a ton of points, and the Philadelphia 76ers are just getting points by the wheelbarrow. And in connection with that, obviously they beat the Lakers. Like I said, I looked at Kobe Bryant's impact to the betting outcome for the Lakers depending on how many points he scored. I will give a hint that the less he does, the better the Lakers do, at least against the spread. And the more scoring he has to do, the more off it gets for the Lakers. And then it's another big week for the NFL. I'll have my Muff Punt column. My Mismatches column is up there right now. All the action, all the line moves, reports from the books. Our Twitter feed is just stacked with information right now. If you're looking to bet the NFL, if you're looking to bet anything this weekend, it's all there. Covers.com, and it's free. It's all free.
Awesome. Well, I am super excited for this weekend with championship games for college football. Another awesome NFL slate. Going to be yet another fantastic weekend. You have a wonderful one, my friend, and we will be back again next Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Boom shakalaka.